Hello, aspirants. So today we're going to dive into a really important topic for your GS Paper 2. It sits right at the intersection of health, governance, and, social justice. We're talking about vaccine injury compensation and why India's silence on this is a pretty significant governance gap.
Think back to the COVID-19 vaccination drive. I mean, the scale was just immense, wasn't it? Over 219 crore doses. But you see, it was much more than just a massive health exercise. At its heart, it was a social contract, a pact between 1.4 billion people and the state. We all answered the call, right? We put our trust in the system for the greater good.
Okay, so this is where the real question comes in. The state asks everyone to take a small risk, a really small one, for the benefit of all. But what happens when that risk, for a very few people, actually becomes a reality? What is the state's responsibility then? That's really the central question we need to dig into.
Now, look at this phrase on your screen, governance deficit. This is a key word for you aspirants. The problem here isn't just a medical one. It's a fundamental breakdown in state accountability. This silence, it goes right to the heart of our constitutional promise under Article 21, the right to life and health. The very thing the state is supposed to protect. All right, and that brings me to a really critical legal development. Aspirants, make a note of this one. The Supreme Court's direction in the Rachana Gangu versus Union of India case. This is a landmark. It's a textbook example of judicial activism pushing for policy change. Absolutely perfect for your mains answers. The court is basically saying loud and clear that the current system just isn't working. So what exactly are these gaps? Where is the system failing? Let's break it down and see why the current framework is just not up to the task.
Okay, let's look at the numbers for a second. This is from the government's own affidavit to the Supreme Court. Over 92,000 recorded adverse events following immunization. AFIIs. Now, let's be very clear. Vaccines are incredibly safe, and these events are rare. But the number is not zero. And behind every single one of those numbers is a person, a family, who did their duty and ended up suffering for it.
And this is where a key legal principle comes into play, something very important for your governance paper. It's called the doctrine of legitimate expectation. What does it mean? Well, simply put, if you, as a citizen, follow a government directive, like getting vaccinated, you have a legitimate expectation that the government will have your back if something goes wrong. It's a powerful tool to argue for state accountability.
So where's the big roadblock? It's the legal path itself. Right now, we rely on tort law. This means the person who got hurt has to prove fault. Can you imagine? It's a huge burden, it's expensive, and frankly, it's almost impossible. The solution being pushed for is a no-fault system. This flips the script. It works on presumption. If you got vaccine A and suffered known side effect B, the link is assumed. It's just so much faster, fairer, and more efficient.
And the great thing is, India doesn't have to reinvent the wheel here. We can just look at global best practices. There are already road-tested models out there. In many, many countries, they've figured out how to make this work, so we have a clear roadmap. Just look at this list. The United States, the UK, Germany, Japan, the Nordic countries, even Taiwan. They all have these no-fault compensation programs. So this isn't some radical new idea. It's actually a standard feature of any mature, modern public health system, a system that cares about both the big picture and the individual. Okay, so taking inspiration from these global examples, but tailoring it for India, what would our framework actually look like? This is the part about the policy solution, so pay close attention. This is gold for your mains answers. Basically, it's a four-step solution. Step 1, we need a proper act of parliament that creates a vaccine injury table. This establishes that presumptive link we talked about. Step 2, set up an independent body, a quasi-judicial one with doctors and lawyers to process claims fast. Third, a shared funding mechanism between the government and the manufacturers. And finally, and this is crucial, we need to seriously strengthen our AEFI surveillance to get better data and be more transparent. You can see how each of these steps fixes a specific problem we have right now. But remember, this is about so much more than just money. The real goal, the bigger picture, is to build what we call a trust dividend. Think about it. When people see that the government has a fair, transparent system in place for when things go wrong, it builds incredible trust. And that trust, that's an asset, a critical asset for any future public health crisis or program. Okay, let's bring it all back to your preparation. How do you take all this information and actually use it to score better in GS2 and maybe even ace your interview?
Let's connect the dots. When you're writing your mains answer, you need to use these keywords. Structure your argument around them. Talk about social justice, protecting the few who take a hit for the collective good. Absolutely mention the governance deficit and state accountability. Bring in the role of the judiciary as a catalyst for policy change. And of course, the big one, always link it back to the broad interpretation of Article 21.
And what about the interview? Well, you could get hit with questions just like these. They're designed to test how deeply you've thought about it. For example, how do you balance the good of the public with individual rights? Can you explain the doctrine of legitimate expectation in your own words? How do you actually build trust into policy beyond just giving out money? These are the kinds of questions you should be thinking about.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Try to look beyond just the compensation angle. Ask yourself this: how can a transparent accountability mechanism like this one become the very foundation, the bedrock, of India's public health success for decades to come? It's not just about fixing a past problem, it's about building a better future. Think about that. All the best for your preparation.